Hi, I'm Cephas, and this is Hancock. Today, we are going to discuss why this film is a true 10 out of 10. First off, for those of you not familiar with Hancock, it is a 2008 film starring Will Smith, who plays a drunk and vulgar superhero. It is a satire on superhero films that was frankly ahead of its time. But for whatever reason, this film has garnered a lot of criticism, especially for its second half. Whatever the case may be, this criticism overlooks something very crucial: impact. I will explain why there is no denying Hancock deeply impacted the superhero genre, and how that impact can be felt even in superhero movies and television being produced today. Buckle up, because we're going to see how Hancock's mise-en-scène, cinematography, writing, and casting made what could have been a forgettable Will Smith blockbuster into an impactful 10 out of 10 masterpiece. And it all started at the beginning. The film opens with a big white getaway car jetting into frame. All of a sudden, a convict bursts out of one of the car windows brandishing his Uzi, opening fire on the police without a care for the innocent pedestrians frantically weaving around them. We cut from the blaring sirens and cars whizzing by to a man passed out on a park bench. The deafening sirens continue as a non-diegetic sound to mimic the imminent ringing in the man's head due to the hangover he is wrestling with, which is eluded by the whiskey bottle next to him. A child emerges into frame and shakes the man to try and wake him, but to no avail. As the child struggles to awaken the man, an eagle painted on the bench is revealed. This eagle looms over the man in order to signify the duty which he is actively neglecting. Abruptly, the child hits the man and yells, "Hancock!" which is the first time we hear our hero's name. As Hancock fights to get his bearings, the child points to the television sets to remind him that he has bad guys he needs to take care of. Instead of thanking the child, like a superhero should,
"You want a cookie?"
the child then brilliantly calls him an asshole as he walks out of frame, and Hancock gets very offended at this word. A lot more offended than most. This plants the seed into the audience subconscious that this might be an issue later on. In this introduction, we have already been introduced to the main character, the world he lives in, and his greatest flaw. With each cut, the viewer gets thrust deeper into the complex world of 2008 Los Angeles when all of a sudden Hancock shoots up into the air, which cues the song. This song poetically plays as if each beat carries Smith throughout the beautiful orange, smoggy, polluted LA skyline, dancing around jet planes and flocks of geese. Absolutely brilliant use of camera work, editing, music, computer graphics, and set design culminate into what only can be described as masterful attention to mise-en-scène. Mise-en-scène, for the majority of you who don't know, is a French term that refers to everything in front of the camera in a film, including the actors, sets, props, costumes, and lighting. When a film has good mise-en-scène, it means everything's coming together in the film to create a huge vibe, man. You feel me? Peter Berger is a master of mise-en-scène, along with his close friend director Wes Anderson. Everyone knows Anderson pays attention to detail in his set design and shot composition to a borderline disgusting level. He makes sure all of the colors of the costumes, props, and backgrounds aid in the message he is trying to send to the audience. Every shot is centered and precise to give his films an uncanny feeling that makes your skin crawl. His use of mise-en-scène all but forces the audience to say that they really liked his movies. I mean, who could get bored of a movie when everything is in the middle of the frame? Truly genius. Hancock's shots may not be centered, however, the mise-en-scène in the introduction of Hancock is no different than that of Wes Anderson's masterpiece, Grand Budapest Hotel. It ensures the audience gets truly immersed into the world in a matter of a few short minutes, making this a perfect introduction to the film. But the mise-en-scène is only what is going on in front of the camera. Another piece of the puzzle is how the camera is utilized, and this is called cinematography. Hancock is a much more abstruse, textured film, with many more layers than it is given credit for. And this is bigly in part to the film's cinematography. Cinematographer Tobias A. Schlieser achieves complete immersion for the audience by utilizing the shaky camera technique. This technique has been heavily criticized for giving some people nausea because of the constant motion similar to being rocked on a boat. While it is often not a great idea to make your audience sick, in the circumstance of Hancock is entirely the point. The primary use of shaky handheld footage is actually quite profound because it accomplishes complete immersion. Shaky cam helps accomplish this immersion because it forces the audience to see the world just like Hancock, which is a hungover, homeless man waking up in his own filth each morning. The camera team on Hancock knew that a common symptom of hangover is dizziness and nausea, which is exactly what 90% of the film being shot using the shaky cam technique does to the viewer. Some filmmakers that use shaky handheld camera masterfully are the Safdie brothers, who use it along with close-ups to immerse the viewer into a stressful experience. Or in the Bourne series, cinematographer Oliver Wood uses a shaky cam that doesn't let you see what's going on half the time to mimic Jason Bourne's memory loss. Peter Berg, unlike directors such as Wes Anderson who hate immersion, often opts for the use of shaky footage that utilizes the rule of thirds. This allows for shots that are objectively beautiful in accordance to the golden ratio, an idea that Wes Anderson completely rejects, while the director of Hancock, Peter Berg, embraces with open arms.
Peter Berg's style, very much kind of handheld, quite a frenetic feel to it. Was that your intention from the beginning?
Did we use handheld camera?
However, good cinematography is just one element that ensures the impact of a film that makes it a 10 out of 10. Another crucial thing that makes or breaks a film happens before any camera is chosen or any of the actors are even picked out, and that is the writing. The story of Hancock was originally written by V. Vincent Nigo in 1996 as a spec script to Night He Coons. The script was in development hell for years, with various directors attached. During the 12 years the film was in pre-production, the script was passed around more than Smith's wife to different directors. Tony Scott, Michael Mann, Jonathan Mostow, and Gabriel Muschino all got their hands on it before the studio made a final decision to make Peter Berg the film's director. Then filming began in 2007 in Los Angeles. What seems like a horribly slow start with 11 years of development actually turned out to be a blessing in disguise. This allowed for the film to be much more refined because of the extra attention to detail the multiple seasoned directors brought to the table. At this point, it was clear that Hancock was going to have more thought put into it than your average Michael Bay action blockbuster. But there was one problem: they needed a writer. The stars were seeming to align because the perfect man was chosen to bring this more subtle superhero story to the big screen. This man was an up-and-coming brilliant pioneer, and his name was Vince Gilligan. Arguably, the aspect of this film that truly elevates it to a 10 out of 10 is the masterful writing that Vince Gilligan brought to the table. We see the impact that the writing had within the first few minutes, when Hancock says this so elegantly to the villains in the car.
Your head is going up the driver's ass, and you drew the short stick because your head is going up my ass.
This line may seem like just some funny comic relief. Well, at the beginning it is just that, a funny bit that tells the audience more about Hancock. But later on in the film, he says the exact same thing to these prisoners, and he actually follows through with his promise.
You don't move, your head is going up his ass. Shoot you, asshole.
In this scene, Hancock actually shoves one man's head into another man's anal cavity. And the immaculate thing is, both the men survived the ordeal, as we see later on. What starts as a mere funny line turned into an entire plot line highlighting a main theme in Hancock, which is pushing the human limit as far as it'll go. It proves that Hancock isn't the only superpowered person in this film, but the average human is capable of superhuman feats. And in the words of famous film antihero Syndrome from The Incredibles,
"And when everyone's super, no one will be."
With ideas as rich as paying homage to the greatest superhero film of all time, Gilligan's pioneering writing style guaranteed a much more nuanced portrayal of a superhero than the average cape-wearing crusader. With Gilligan's Hancock, you get a drunk, crass, yet charming superhero. His goal was to make a superhero that exited the lines of convention by being, well, more human. What resulted was a witty satire on the idea of the superhero as a whole, which turned out to be ahead of its time because the public and the critics obviously weren't ready for Gilligan's brilliance based on the Rotten Tomatoes score alone. This low rating, however, shouldn't immediately discredit the film, because there are plenty of other amazing classics that garnered a lot of criticism at first, such as Casablanca, Jaws, Alien, John Carpenter's The Thing, and the immortalized Freddy Got Fingered. It makes you wonder what films this is going to happen to next. Little did people know in 2008 what great of an impact that Hancock would truly have on the superhero genre forever. Gilligan's willingness to poke fun at superhero movies paved the way for films like the classic Green Hornet, or more recently, television shows like The Boys. One of the most popular shows out right now, The Boys builds off the premise Hancock presents in having very flawed superheroes. The writers of The Boys go even further by critiquing the idea of superhero cinematic universes in big corporations as a whole. Now, spoiler warning for The Boys. They did this by creating a fictional company in their show called Vought that creates superheroes by injecting babies with a drug developed by the Nazis called Compound V. Vought profits off the superheroes by creating movies, toys, and all sorts of merchandise, all while sweeping any scandals under the rug with the power they have. Now, this alone proves The Boys to be a very interesting and thought-provoking show. but the creators of The Boys decided to go above and beyond by creating 3 boring spin-off shows which are all being produced by the biggest corporation in America, Amazon Prime. The producers and executives at Amazon, profiting off of multiple mediocre spin-off shows no one asked for, is truly genius because it's utilizing the art of meta-political subversive superhero satire. The Boys writers and Amazon are turning into the villain of their own television show, Vought Corporation, the very thing they are criticizing. Just like how Will Smith eventually turns into an alcoholic down bad cuck with a god complex, just like the character he plays, Hancock. In the words of another cinematic master of subverting expectations, George Lucas,
again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
And this brings me to my last point, which is the importance of picking an actor that reflects the qualities of the main character. Something that almost all 10 out of 10 movies share is that the stories are often crafted with the actor who is going to play the main character in mind. Take for instance in Apocalypse Now. One of the defining characteristics of the main character was that he was a broken, self-destructive alcoholic. This character trait allowed for Captain Willard to be the malleable soldier the United States needed to send him on a suicide mission that would take down Marlon Brando's immortalized AWOL commando. Now, if they just picked up some other health nut, green smoothie glug and A-list actor, that would have taken a lot more time for them to get into character. But Martin Sheen didn't need any extra time at all, because he was actually a broken man with a serious drinking problem. And for most of the film, he was actually drunk, and even had a heart attack on set due to his heavy drinking. So why would director Coppola purposefully cast Martin Sheen, who plays a character that encourages his bad behavior, to the point that it actually threatened his own life in the process? Well, he did this because Coppola wasn't a pussy. He didn't want some corny B-movie. He wanted authenticity. He wanted a masterpiece. He simply wanted Kino. For those who don't know, Kino is an adjective referring to films and other visual media, meaning finest or of the highest quality. Basically, 10 out of 10 movies are synonymous with Kino movies, and both Apocalypse Now and Hancock are objectively Kino. 10 out of 10 Kino movies always have actors play characters that are somehow based on the reality of their own life. This allows the protagonists to give their best performances ever because they are pulling from their own lives. Even though it almost cost him his life, they needed to cast a self-loathing alcoholic like Martin Sheen in order to allow for his character to come alive, in order to elevate this film to Kino. While Vince Gilligan knew that Will Smith may not be the alcoholic that Hancock was, he knew that he had the potential. So Berg and Gilligan made a part of Will Smith's life that he wasn't comfortable with be the main focus of the second half of the film. And this is why Hancock often gets criticized for feeling like 2 different movies. The first half being how he redeemed himself and became the superhero the world needs, and the second half being about Hancock's wife, who turns out to be his friend's wife with superpowers. But this is actually an amazing choice by the masterful writer Vince Gilligan. He introduces the age-old idea of the failed romance. Let's take a look at what happens to Hancock and how he is perceived. He is a superhero who cucks his friend by revealing he was actually married to her for 3,000 years, and he has a weird backstory that involves non-human supergods. Does this sound familiar? Well, it should, because under further examination, this is almost identical to Will Smith's actual life. He joined the Church of Scientology, which says that their origins are of godlike humans that started the religion. On top of this, he has been haunted by his own wife's cucking him, so in the film he wants to turn the tables. He becomes the danger. He becomes the one who cucks. And this is why they added the often criticized plotline of Ray's wife Mary having superpowers and having been married to Hancock for years prior. Additionally, Hancock suffers from alcoholism, just like Smith would from the depression of being cucked, which makes the performance shine, just like Martin Sheen's did in Apocalypse Now. Hancock has an amazing comeback from the beginning of the movie being a drunk loser that's hated by everyone to being a beloved superhero once again. This comeback foretells Will Smith's inevitable comeback that he is yet to have after slapping Chris Rock and getting cucked by his own wife Jada Smith. Hancock isn't a simple satire on superheroes. If you read between the lines, it's actually a Will Smith biopic. It is how Will Smith perceives his life and his future trajectory. He views himself as a man with powers above mere mortals that will redeem his humanity and dignity. Overall, from the very beginning until the end, Hancock proves that it is a 10 out of 10 film. Through the film's mise-en-scène, it crafts impeccable texture and immerses the audience into the story from the very first frame. The cinematography of Hancock embraces the golden ratio, an objective definition of beauty by utilizing the rule of thirds and shaky cam. Not to mention the film's masterful writing by the great Vince Gilligan, who turned a man shoving another man's head into another man's anus into the highest form of poetry. And finally, the casting team of Hancock learned from the classics like Apocalypse Now by picking an actor who thinks his life mimics the character he plays. So don't be an asshole. Go ahead and give Hancock a watch and you'll see why it's truly a 10 out of 10 masterpiece.